Welcome to St. Peter's in Hove, and I'm Father Alexander. And welcome to our next step in our walking tour through the Bible. And we're going to be looking at Daniel. We're just going to be looking at one very small piece of Daniel, and that is chapter 12, verses 1 to 4, which is a very small piece of Daniel. So if you'll allow me to go back, we've got several other visions. We've already talked about the first vision of Daniel. The other visions are all the same, really, except they're couched in somewhat different language. They're all the same. The vision of a kingdom arising, then another kingdom arising, then the worst kingdom of all coming along, which is Antiochus Epiphanes, and the persecution of the Jews, and then the liberation of the Jews from this persecution. That's basically it. So it is an exhortation to the Jews to stand firm in persecution. Now, one of the things is, of course, it talks about it as some sort of divine intervention. And, the one of great age sitting on his throne, the one like a son of man, and so on. Now, the divine intervention could be read, I suppose, as the arrival of the Maccabees, the revival of Israel, which is inspired by God. But in chapter 12, something somewhat different happens. In chapter 11, the actual conflict between Israel and the nations is seen as some sort of angelic battle. Then in chapter 12, we're told at that time Michael will arise, the angel, who is the protector of Israel, and the great prince, defender of your people, he's called. That will be a time of great distress. Okay, so it's the persecution by Antiochus, unparalleled since nations first came into existence. It's going to be the worst persecution that the Israelites have ever known. In other words, much worse than the persecution under Pharaoh. Antiochus is going to be much worse than Pharaoh. When that time comes, your own people will be spared, all those whose names are found written in the book. So the ones who are going to survive the persecution are the ones whose name are written in the book, the chosen few, those who do not cooperate with the great apostasy, those who stay faithful. Then it sort of says, of those who are sleeping in the land of dust, in other words, the dead and the buried, many will awaken, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting disgrace. Now, here we have the picture of the Last Judgement. And I say we have the picture of the Last Judgement because reading this, Michelangelo then painted the picture which is on the wall of the Sistine Chapel. If you remember the Sistine Chapel, one side shows people rising from the dust, going up to heaven. Another side shows people going down to eternal perdition. So God will call the dead to new life, some of them to heaven and others to hell. And it goes on. Those who are wise will shine as brightly as the expanse of the heavens, and those who have instructed many in uprightness as bright as stars for all eternity. So they're going to heaven. Quite literally, they're going to be like stars. As for those who are going down to everlasting disgrace, it doesn't actually spell out what everlasting disgrace means. But you, Daniel, must keep these words secret, and keep the book sealed until the time of the end. Many will roam about this way and that, and wickedness will continue to increase. What does that mean? Well, the end is coming, but it's a secret when the end is going to come. Wickedness is going to go on increasing, but when the end comes, the wicked will be punished and the good will be rewarded. Divine justice will be done. So it's going a little bit further than the previous prophecies of Daniel, which have sort of said there's going to be a reversal. The people persecuting you will be put in their place. Now we've got the promise of a universal judgment by God of the whole world, of all the people who've ever lived. The good will be rewarded, particularly those who taught others to be good. In other words, the doctors of the law, the teachers of the Torah, they're going to be rewarded. And those who did wrong are going down to everlasting disgrace. That is what is going to happen. It's actually, when you consider how some people are obsessed with the end of the world, it's a remarkably limited and modest vision of the end of the world. It basically says at the end, Michael will arise, God's people will be vindicated, the good will be rewarded, the evil will be punished. But when this is going to happen, we don't know. It's a secret, you see, and that is all that's going to happen. Clearly, this is a passage that Jesus had in mind when he was telling the parable about the sheep and the goats. Some are going to go off to hell, some are going to go off to heaven. God will judge and he will separate sheep from goats like a shepherd. That's all there really is to it. Nevertheless, as you and I know, a lot of people have spent so much time trawling through the Bible, trying to find extraordinary things, terrible secrets, which they can then announce to the world about the end times. Actually, what's really important about the end times is this. It's not the end times, it's the now times. You are going to be judged. I am going to be judged. Let us act now as people who one day will have to give an account of our behavior. Let us ensure that we are the ones who are going to be taken up into the stars rather than those sent down to eternal disgrace. Let us be those people whom Michael will vindicate. Michael, who is, of course, against the other princes, who we identify with the devils. Let us hope that we're on the right side, in other words. That's all that we really need to think about with regard to the end of the world. But it is also a very important passage because this is more or less, along with the Book of Wisdom, which we've talked about, and along with the Book of the Maccabees, the first real indication of an afterlife in the Hebrew scriptures. And it's also the first very clear indication of God as the universal judge in the Hebrew scriptures. So there is an afterlife, there will be a judgment, and the judgment will be just, and then it'll be heaven or hell. So make your choice now. Start acting as though you're somebody who wants to go to heaven. It's an interesting passage. Um, it's a very brief passage. The rest of Daniel is essentially padding. The rest of the chapter I find not particularly enlightening. That bit is very enlightening. If you want to imagine it, just look at the Sistine Chapel wall painted by Michelangelo. All the best. Bye.